Okie dokie, guys. So I wanna go over a couple things. I've been having some great groups with people lately, and I'm seeing kind of some of where people are getting confused. So I'm excited to share this video with you because I think it's going to clear some things up for you. So let's start. I've got some notes written over here at the left side. So let's start with just looking at our steps for when we're solving two steps. When we're solving two steps, we're literally doing two steps. Okay, so there's two things we have to do to solve this problem. The problem I'm looking at is 7x plus 5 equals negative 16. Okay, so the first step is going to be undo the adding or subtracting part of this equation with the inverse operation. I wonder if you're saying, what's an inverse operation? Well, I've got notes on that too. Let's look down here in the red ink. An inverse operation, another word for inverse is kind of opposite, right? Like what is something that undoes this or gives us a 0 or a 1? So an inverse operation is pretty easy to remember. If you're adding, the inverse is subtracting. If you're subtracting, the inverse is adding. So the first step says we're going to undo any addition or subtraction we see in this first problem by doing the inverse of that. Okay, let's look at the second step. It says undo multiplication or dividing with the inverse. So again, if the original problem has multiplication, the second step is going to be dividing because we can see that's the inverse. If the problem starts with dividing, then the inverse of that is multiplication. So we're kind of always doing the opposite. Okay, so what I would like to do first is let's go ahead and figure out what the heck's going on with this problem and what we might do to solve it. Okay, 7x plus 5 equals negative 16. What do we have going on here? It's important we know what the operations are. So the first operation I see, 7 and x, that's multiplication. So here's the thing though. If I'm starting with multiplication, then when I come to solving it, I have to do the inverse. That's what the second step is, right? If I see multiplication, I do division. So I'm just going to kind of remind myself and make a little like, this is what I'm going to need to do when I get to step 2. Okay. What else do I see happening in this problem? I see that we're adding 5. So I'm going to put addition. And again, when it's time for me to solve that one, that's the first step, then I'm going to subtract because that's the inverse operation. Okay. So I'm starting with multiplication and addition. And as I solve it, I will be doing subtraction and division. Okay. Hope that's kind of sinking in and making a little bit of sense. And you'll see more as we go. The other thing I want to draw your attention to, or kind of make sure you understand, is that a two-step equation is literally just two one-step equations. A lot of people are getting stuck on the second step, but you've done problems like that before. So I've kind of divided this problem that I have here up into two little one steps. Now I know that the main equation up here says 7x, but just to simplify it, I put an x here. And then I put 7x equals negative 21. Because really, if you can solve these two problems, you can solve this problem. So let's go ahead and see what we should do for the first step here. So if I have this little one step, and also if I'm doing the first step of a two-step, it says undo the adding and subtracting part with the inverse. Well, I see that we're adding 5, and I know the inverse is to subtract. That's going to cancel. I'm going to bring down my x equals, and then I have negative 16 minus 5. I've noticed on some people's work they're not using a calculator for negatives. Please use a calculator for negatives and just put in the calculator whatever it is that you see. So in the calculator, you would put negative 16 minus 5, and you would get negative 21. We just solved a one step. And guess what? If we can do this, we can do this. So let's go ahead and try it up here. I'm going to do the inverse of adding 5 because my first step says undo the adding and subtracting part with the inverse. The inverse of plus 5 is minus 5. There we go. I'm going to bring down my 7x equals, again, negative 16 minus 5 is negative 21. I've done the first step. Yay. Check. Okay, now let's do the second step. Now this is where a lot of people are getting confused, but you don't need to get confused because you've done this before. Let's look at our little one step over here. Our little one-step equation, which you've solved plenty of these. And the first question would be, what's happening? It's multiplying. And I know the inverse of multiply is to divide. That also happens to be the second step. So let's go ahead and solve this one. If I'm multiplying here, I'm going to divide both sides by 7. And I'm going to cancel, and I get x equals negative 3, because negative 21 divided by 7, put that in your calculator, negative 21 divided by 7 is negative 3. Well, let's get back to our two-step problem. Look at this. Look at this. This is the same as our original problem here. Okay? So if you can solve a one-step equation, you can solve a two-step. Because a two-step is just two one-steps stuck together. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this. I'm going to divide by 7 on both sides. Cancel. X equals negative 3. Check. And I'm done. Okay? So I'm going to kind of review a couple things we talked about here. Make sure that you're following the steps. The first one is to undo the adding and subtracting part with the inverse. The inverse of addition is subtracting. If you have a problem starting with subtraction, you're going to add to the inverse, which is adding. Second step, undo the multiplication or dividing part with the inverse. So if in the first problem, if the problem I'm doing has multiplication, then I know the second step will be dividing. If my problem has dividing, I know I'm going to be multiplying. Okay? The other thing I want you to remember is that a two-step equation is just two little one-steps put together. Okay? So we're going to try one more. Sorry this video is long, but I really want to see if we can clear up some things that have been confusing to some people. Okay, so I'm going to move this all up. Hopefully you can still kind of see the steps there. And I am going to make a problem that says k over 2 minus 7 equals negative 2. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and follow our directions. It says undo the adding or subtracting with the inverse. I see subtraction, so I know the inverse is to add. Here we go. I'm going to bring down my k over 2. My 7s are gone, equals, and I'm going to say negative 2 plus 7 is 5. All right, second step. Second step says undo multiplication or dividing with the inverse. What do I see here? I see dividing. What's the inverse of dividing? Multiplying. Okay, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. These are going to cancel, and I get k equals 10. Okay, so there's a little bit of extra help, hopefully, about two-step equations for you. And so hopefully this will help you get some of the assignments from this week done. Make sure you get them all done. You've got a worksheet that some of you did in class. You've got a slides assignment from Monday, and you have an ed puzzle. So I'm not giving you any more, but I do need you guys to catch up on what you're supposed to have been doing. So I hope this helps you do that. Have a great day.